I'm not happy.
I don't need Elizabeth Warren or the government giving away my money.
Calling Mike Bloomberg an oligarch has implications in this country that I think are unfair and unreasonable.
I care. That's it.
Makes you think of some rich person who got their money off of oil in Russia, who's taking advantage of a broken and dysfunctional system.
Bernie Sanders saying, the country's corrupt, our system's corrupt. Be careful about that language, Bernie. You know, be careful.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Beta bear.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation, hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Well, I should say welcome to the show, because we actually haven't started yet. So, I'm a little late today. I had some tech problems. That's why I don't even have my recording of Who's Got a Hammer, because I could use one right now. We've got insanity in the control room, and I don't even have the sound clip. So, yeah, I just had some major tech problems today. So I am massively late. That sucks, but I want to get these stories done. So we're just going to run through them the best we can, and I will troubleshoot and get everything back and put back together when I have time, which is much later. So let's get to the stories. We got some very important stuff to talk about, including Build Back Better. Joe Manchin says, better not. And I don't even have my sidebars. So what a disaster. What a disaster. Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's what we're doing today. So let's just go right through it. On Sunday, alleged Democrat Joe Manchin delivered the final nail in the coffin for Joe Biden's domestic spending agenda. And to pour a little salt on the wound, he just happened to do it on Fox News. Take a look.
This is a no on this legislation. I have tried everything I know to do.
Well, it's a no. It's a no. Now, again, that was in response to Bret Baier asking if it meant that he was done with negotiation. And so, there you go. Now, I guess we should probably get into his reasoning about this, or at least what he claims is his reasoning for killing, again, Joe Biden, President Biden's, the Democratic president's agenda. Here it is.
Well, Brett, this is a mammoth piece of legislation, and I had my reservations from the beginning when I heard about it 5.5 months ago, and I've been working diligently. I've done everything humanly possible. And my concerns I had, and I still have these concerns, and where I'm at right now, the inflation that I was concerned about, it's not transitory, it's real, it's harming every West Virginian. It's making it almost difficult for them to continue to go to their jobs, the cost of gasoline, the cost of groceries, the cost of utility bills, all of these things are hitting in every aspect of their life. And you start looking at, then you have the debt that we're carrying at $29 trillion. You have also the geopolitical unrest that we have. You have the COVID variant. And that is wreaking havoc again. People are concerned. I've been with my family. I know everyone's concerned. So when you have these things coming at you the way they are right now, I've always said this, Brett, if I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You just can't get there. Because he would have to go back to explain to the people of West Virginia why he couldn't support the bill. You know, or I'm sorry, if he passed it, if he had supported it, he'd have to go back to the people of West Virginia to explain it. But here's the thing, he's going to have to go back to the people of West Virginia and explain why he doesn't support it, because it is filled with very popular provisions for the people of West Virginia. In fact, here's a poll. This is back in August, where you had a mass majority of likely voters in West Virginia, 68%, that supported not the $2 trillion, not the pared down version, but the $3.5 trillion. The bigger bill. And now he says, oh, I'm so worried about the debt. I'm so worried about the deficit. I have to explain all of this, why we're spending so much on the government, why the government's spending so much money. I got to explain to the people of West Virginia we're so fiscally conservative. Whereas, oh, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Even a majority of Republicans, 56%, supported this bill. Independents, 64%. Democrats, 90%. 90. He's supposed to be a Democrat, but he's not. He's not. No, the people that he would have to explain to are the donors, because that's who he works for. He works for the donors. He works for the corporations. But you understand, Jeff, he's worked so very, very hard. He's done everything humanly possible to try to work with the bill, even though he's actually had to do nothing, because every single time anybody's approached him, it's like, oh, Joe Manchin, what do you want? Joe Manchin, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? We'll give you everything you want. Oh, you wanted to pare it back? Okay, we'll get rid of this. Oh, we'll pare that down. Oh, we'll reduce the costs. We'll do this. We'll do this. We'll take out tax increases from the rich. Yes, we'll get rid of those. We didn't like those anyway, because we serve the corporations. We're just going to get rid of all of that stuff that you didn't like, or pare it back so massively. Oh, a child tax credit? You want to get rid of the child tax credit too? Well, I don't know about that. Again, he has done everything in his power to water the thing down, to make sure the American people, his constituents in West Virginia, do not get paid leave, do not get child care, that older people, seniors, do not get hearing, vision, and dental care, that we don't invest in clean, renewable energy to get us off more expensive coal and Saudi oil. Now, of course, there's definitely a reason he didn't like that provision at all. No, save it. And the idea that the American people wouldn't benefit from this during COVID and inflation, and that's what the excuse. Oh, COVID, we got to focus on inflation. We got to focus on COVID. I'm not saying we don't, but here's the thing: making healthcare more affordable during a pandemic. Wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't that make people's lives a little bit easier? Wouldn't it? What about direct checks for families with children using their child tax credit? That's one thing that he doesn't like, that he didn't want, that he opposed. Oh, and I've got a great quote on that one in another segment, saying that none of that would help families during a time of inflation and COVID is absolutely ridiculous. Super ridiculous. These are exactly the types of investment policies that the American people need right now. But no, Joe Manchin, I don't want you to have those things. Joe Manchin and the Republican Party, obviously, because look, here's the thing. So I know immediately when this happens, you get the Democrat brigade that comes out and is like, 50 Republicans oppose this, right? It's not Democrats' fault. Well, Joe Manchin is a swing vote. Joe Manchin is supposed to be a Democrat. He's the one vote that it hinged on for it to go through budget reconciliation. Yeah, and it's pretty much a given that Republicans are going to block everything that actually helps the average American, unless, of course, they're in power and the beloved stock market falls. Then they're going to do everything that they can, which is what happened during the Trump administration, when in reality, you got $1,400 checks, and unemployment benefits. Yes, a lot of that stuff was pushed, by the way, by Bernie Sanders and the Democratic minority. The fact of the matter is, at this point, voters can look at what each party has done. And they can see that, oh, look, the Republicans, again, because of the stock markets and everything like that, and the election that was coming up, actually ended up doing more for you, at least in those regards. They did a bunch of horrible, horrible shit as well, and tons of upward wealth redistribution to the rich and corporations and their donors than the Democrats have. And a lot of that is a result of people like Joe Manchin, who went and blocked everything. And of course, again, you can blame the Republicans, because the Republicans, they know, at least they know enough to give something out, to throw a bone to the poor once in a while also giving most of it to the rich. And then, of course, doing horrible, horrible social things. So social policies. But as I said, the Republicans, Joe Manchin sided with the Republicans. Joe Manchin sided with Mitch McConnell. They couldn't have asked for a better ally than Joe Manchin, who, I need to remind you, Manchin is not a moderate. Manchin is a corporatist. When it came to handing out billions of dollars in corporate welfare with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, he was 100% on board. In fact, corporations loved the bipartisan infrastructure bill because it had lots of handouts to fossil fuels, especially. And yes, there were good things in it. Obviously, rebuilding roads and bridges is good. Broadband upgrades, that's good. Public transit, investments in that's good. But again, there's also privatization of public assets, which is not good. That means toll booths. That means more for you. Not only do you pay for it through your taxes, but you also end up paying more because, now you got to pay a corporation to use a road that you funded. They love that, though. They love that. And there's the other thing, right? Again, the bipartisan infrastructure bill did not raise taxes in the rich, meaning that it would actually add to the deficit. I thought Joe Manchin cared so much about the deficit. No, it turns out, according to the CBO, it adds about $350 billion into the deficit. Where was Joe Manchin then? Where's Joe Manchin then? Now, it also repurposed a lot of COVID money. But Joe Manchin, of course, totally fine with all of that. Because guess what? This spending will go to government contractors, corporations. What was left out of this, the bipartisan bill, that he loved so much, was raising the wages of home health care workers who don't get paid enough. Long-term services for Medicaid, workforce development, improved VA hospitals, and of course, corporate tax hikes, which again, Joe Manchin is not interested in because he loves low taxes on corporations. They all do to an extent. I mean, Joe Biden, for example, he's like, let's bring the corporate tax rate up to 28%, which is actually lower than the Obama rate, which had been lowered from other presidents still. Now, of course, again, some of that stuff might have been added to Build Back Better. I mean, at least that was the promise, right? We'll just take out of this one, put it back into Build Back Better and pass it as a different bill. But we'll couple them together to make sure both of them get passed. And what happened? It got decoupled, and here we go. We ended up getting the bipartisan corporate bill, and now nothing. No Build Back Better. Another example of how Joe Manchin doesn't care about fiscal responsibility. He voted to pass a $768 billion National Defense Authorization Act bill. That's additional money to the military. That's more than double the $3.5 trillion infrastructure compromise. How much, again, remember, this is all over 10 years. The Pentagon gets $768 billion every single year. $7 trillion for the next 10 years. Well, actually more so. About 9 when you actually add in all the numbers. It's over $9 trillion. Now, whereas a $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill, that's $350 billion a year. What are we spending more money on? What seems to be our priorities here? Oh, right. Bombing brown people, as opposed to actually taking care of Americans, working class people. No. We got to take care of the defense industry executives. That's what we have to do. Ah, yes, your profit margin. None of that money really goes to the troops. Not that much of it. No, it goes into building bombs and buying planes and tanks that we don't need. Why do we even need them? We're out of Afghanistan. We just ended another war. Joe Biden ended the war in Afghanistan. Suddenly, for some reason, we need more money because they can't help themselves. They just keep shoveling more and more money towards the Pentagon. What a waste. What an absolute waste. And again, this is because corporations have captured our government. This is because of money in the politics. All right? Now, Manchin's a great example of how we live under corporate rule. All right? Again, Joe Manchin makes his money, a lot of money, from coal companies he founded and that he put his son to run. The combined stock in those companies nets him over $4.5 million in income since 2011. Build Back Better actually had some provisions in there to deal with climate change that might actually threaten his income. Investing in renewables threatens his personal finances. And so if he were to support Build Back Better, well, then he would have been hurting himself because it's a conflict of interest. And not only that, but he would have also upset his donors. The Chamber of Commerce, for example, would stop funding his political campaigns. Republicans would stop funding his campaigns, his political campaigns. Republican donors, I should say. Because guess what? They all hate the things that help you. What they want is for you to be poor and desperate so you'll work for their scraps without any complaint. Plus, they don't want you to go raising their taxes by a tiny little bit because maybe then they wouldn't be able to get another yacht. Joe Manchin works for them, not for you, and also works for himself. Know him for what he is. He is a representation of the system that is keeping you down, that is crushing you. And instead of just trying to replace him, which again is a good idea, but how about instead of just replacing him with who knows what'll come next, why don't we replace the system? Get the money out of politics. That is the only way to really solve this problem, the problem of the Joe Manchins of the world. All right, moving on. We got more Joe Manchin. Plenty of it, actually. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, right. Joe Manchin hates his own voters. He literally believes that they are too lazy and stupid to wisely spend government money. Now, again, that's not me saying it. That's people who he has confided in, people that he has talked to. According to a report from HuffPost, in recent months, Manchin, where, he's of course publicly said that, oh no, the reason I'm against Build Back Better and the child tax credit specifically is because I'm just really concerned about the cost. I'm concerned about the cost. I'm concerned about inflation. I'm concerned about COVID. And we need to focus on that. But privately, he thinks that payments, and this is what he has told to fellow Democrats, that parents shouldn't get the child tax credit because they'll use it to buy drugs. Drugs! This is according to two sources familiar with the senator's comments. Manchin has also told colleagues that he believes Americans would fraudulently use proposed paid sick leave in order to feign being sick to go on hunting trips. A source familiar with his comments told HuffPost. So, Americans, they're so lazy and stupid that they will just lie about the tax credits and just buy drugs and then go hunting. Now, those were two incredibly important parts of Build Back Better. Again, paid leave. And the child tax credits would have massively improved the material conditions of working people. Again, the child tax credit has been in place for a while, and it already has helped people's lives. In fact, initial data suggests that the expanded program cut child poverty and child hunger substantially in this country. In fact, the census survey showed that most low-income parents said that they had spent some of the child tax credit on food more than any other item. So all these food insecure households, with that expanded child tax credit that's available to them, and actually it could have done even more good had more Americans signed up for it and knew that they could sign up for this, that, you know, it cut child hunger and poverty by a substantial amount. In fact, before the credit, about 30% of low-income parents said that their household was food insecure, sometimes just not having enough food to eat. After July, the proportion of that dropped to 21%. That's a 9% decrease, meaning that it's actually working. In fact, to compare it, low-income households with no children showed no decline because, well, low-income households without kids, well, they don't get the child tax credit because they don't have children. So you look at that sharp decrease, and you can only deduce that, oh, look, the child tax credit has worked because now these families are no longer food insecure, or much less food insecure. Now, another analysis estimated that the payments prevented about 2 million children from going without enough food. So that's just to put it into real numbers. 2 million children it helped to feed. Another study estimated that the tax credit reduced poverty rate among children from 16% to 12%, effectively keeping 3 million children out of poverty. Black and Latino children were especially likely to benefit. And that's just food. There are other things that people spent this money on. And no, I'm not talking about drugs. Actually, many of them used this money to help their child's education. In the census survey, 30% of all families and about 40% of low-income families said that they used some of the money for educational costs, including school supplies, which we know schools do not have enough funding to provide school supplies for all their children. In fact, a lot of times teachers have to pay out of their own pockets to be able to get school supplies for their kids. In this case, now you have parents that are using this child tax credit to help get their kids supplies that they need to learn. They also used money for private school tuition, transportation to school, or even tutoring. Yeah. Black and Hispanic parents were especially likely to use the money for education. Once again, minority students benefit. And yet Joe Manchin says, oh, no, we got to get rid of it because they're going to buy drugs. Again, these were the most common things parents said that they spent the money on: food and education. You know what? How many households wasted this money? Well, about 4%. 4% of households reported using the money for recreational goods, such as sports equipment or toys, which apparently that's what Joe Manchin would say is a waste. So, no, he's just factually wrong. But understand that this is part of the contempt that Joe Manchin has for the poor and working class of his own state. And by the way, West Virginia is the second poorest state in the country. They could use the stuff that's in Build Back Better. Let me show you the rankings here. West Virginia, 47th on healthcare, 45th on education, 48th on economic mobility, dead last on infrastructure. It's 47th on economic opportunity. The state is a disaster, and it's not because of the people. No, it's because of the leadership. There are wonderful people in West Virginia, hardworking, good, honest people. But they are represented by others who think that they're all lazy, drug-addled idiots. These are conservative talking points 101. It's the same kind of rhetoric that led to drug testing for people to get food stamps and welfare. You know how many people they found when they did that? Less than 1%. Less than 1%. Now, West Virginia itself launched its own drug screening program for welfare recipients in 2017. You know how many people they found? 131. 131 applicants tested positive for drugs. A small fraction of the thousands of program beneficiaries. Those are the facts, but it turns out facts don't matter. No, they just don't want to help poor people. And they're using drugs as an excuse to shame people in poverty. That's the message that they're sending. Hey, poor people, you're both irresponsible because you're poor, obviously. People who are not, people who are responsible can ever be poor. No, that's a trait of the irresponsible drug users. Not true at all. It's not true at all. They're doing poverty shaming. They want to say that people who are poor in America, well, that's absolutely their fault and has nothing to do with anything else. Doesn't have nothing to do with the system that upwardly distributes wealth at the very top instead of to the workers, where much of that wealth actually belongs. It belongs to the workers. You're entitled to the value that your labor creates. Wages are supposed to reflect that, but they haven't. They don't. Not for a long, long time. We're more productive as a people than we've ever been before. Have wages kept up with that? No. Have prices continued to rise? Yes. Inflation is a real issue. And guess what? We're not doing anything to help that. The reason that we have so much inflation is because of greed. You have the people at the top that have all the money. And guess what? For them, it's not enough because they still raise their prices despite making billions of dollars in profit during a pandemic because they could. And that's a fact. That's a fact. It's all greed. Now, one last thing here, real quick. Now, there are Democrats that like to write people off in red states. It's true. I don't agree with that. Now, of course, I understand that there are a lot of conservative voters that you're never going to be able to reach. The unreachables, the real hardcore MAGA cultists, right? But there are Republican voters that you can, and you could do so with good policy. Again, the majority of people in West Virginia supported the provisions in the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better plan, including 68% of West Virginians and a majority of Republicans. As for the child tax credits, again, incredibly popular. According to a Reuters Ipsos poll, 59% of U.S. adults, including 75% of people who identified themselves as Democrats and 41% of people who identified as Republicans, support the child tax credit. And again, the child tax credits mostly went to red states. The top 10 states by average monthly child tax credit payments in August all came from the West and the Midwest. Utah, Idaho, South Dakota, Alaska, Nebraska, well, almost all, I should say, Wyoming, North Dakota, Iowa, Kansas, and Montana, with monthly payments ranging from $515 to $456 in August. All voted last year for Trump over Biden, and all but Kansas have Republican governors. Weird. It's almost as if red states have to be a little bit poorer than blue states. That's real weird. I thought that they were more fiscally conservative and therefore better for business. Weird. Well, maybe they are better for business, but that doesn't mean it's better for the workers. Doesn't mean it's better for the average American who's working 2 or 3 jobs to get by on minimum wage. But the point is, these credits, the tax credits, are popular, they're effective, and they're not tainted by massive fraud or abuse. Joe Manchin is simply a liar who regurgitates Republican talking points about his own voters, about how they're irresponsible. Oh, you can't trust them with government money, when he's more than happy to give government money to his contractor buddies, corporations, because that's who he works for. All right, moving on. Last one about Joe Manchin. All right. Hopefully, yep. Progressives and the White House are going after Joe Manchin for refusing to vote for Build Back Better, the $2 trillion human infrastructure bill that was going to be the central part of Joe Biden's first term. So now there's a lot of different responses here. Let's go to the White House first. Now, in a statement, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki essentially called Joe Manchin a liar. She said that Manchin's comments on Fox News were at, quote, odds with his discussions this week with the president, with the White House staff, and with his own public utterances, and represent a sudden and inexplicable reversal in his position and a breach of his commitments to the president and the senator's colleagues in the House and Senate. Again, that's the White House. That's pretty much the kindest one. But let's continue. So next we have Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal. Here's what she said, quote, today Senator Manchin has betrayed his commitment not only to the president and Democrats in Congress, but most importantly to the American people. He routinely touts that he is a man of his word, but he can no longer say that. West Virginians in the country see clearly who he is. All right, here's more. Representative Ayanna Pressley said that she has a deficit of trust in regard to Manchin. Representative Barbara Lee of California had her own statement, and they're going to get progressively stronger, saying this is exactly why my progressive colleagues and I fought so hard to keep the Build Back Better and bipartisan infrastructure bills together, because we knew that Senator Manchin may choose to side with Republicans and corporate lobbyists over American families. Now, right there, I'm going to stop because this is a great point. Progressives have been making this point for a while. We can't trust him. We couldn't trust Joe Manchin. The only thing that we had was the leverage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Now, Pramila Jayapal and Nancy Pelosi completely ignored that. Now, of course, Nancy Pelosi, I'm not calling her a progressive, but Jayapal claims to be. Jayapal claims to be progressive. I mean, sure, the Progressive Caucus, certainly she would know not to trust Joe Manchin, right? I mean, what a preposterous idea, trusting Joe Manchin. Again, for one, Manchin never agreed to vote for it. Even when they were making all these cuts and paring this back and saying, yes, we're going to pass this, Joe Manchin was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to pass it. Maybe I'll pass it. I don't know. Maybe I don't know, though. I don't know for sure. So he kept saying that over and over again. Whereas the White House was like, oh, we're doing great. We're making a lot of progress. We're doing all that. No, they never had anything in writing. They never had any promises. Not that they would be worth much to me, at least. But the only thing that might have compelled them to vote for this is the bipartisan infrastructure package that he and his donors absolutely loved. The corporations were salivating over this. And by the way, keeping them together and passing them at the same time, that was the original plan. They were supposed to do that. Now, what did Jayapal and Pelosi do? Well, obviously, they reneged on it. They gave him the only bill that he wanted, which was the bipartisan infrastructure bill, because he didn't care about the human infrastructure bill. He didn't want it. Why is this a surprise? Why is this surprising at all? It shouldn't be. Shouldn't be a surprise. In fact, here's Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying, not only is it not surprising, but we warned you, and laying this at the feet of Democratic leadership.
Well, I think what Senator Manchin did yesterday represents such an egregious breach of the trust of the president. And it's also, this is exactly why it's an outcome that we had warned about well over a month ago, about needing to plan a contingency plan for it. It's why we insisted on having the bipartisan infrastructure plan coupled and passed together with the Build Back Better Act. But I think right now we are at a juncture where it's not really about, I think, being angry. I mean, of course, we have every right to be furious with Joe Manchin, but it's really up to leadership in the Democratic Party who, made the decision to get us to this juncture and how we're going to move forward. And I think right now that Democratic leadership has a very large number of tools at their disposal, the president particularly, and it's really about time that, we take the kid gloves off and we start using them to govern for working families in this country.
She's right. She's right. Yes. I mean, look, honestly, it would have been better to take the kids' glove off, because to never put the kids' gloves on. That's what I say. We should have never been treating them with kids' gloves. And that's the thing that frustrates me about progressives. They're running the issues, but they're not good with the politics. Maybe that's the thing, because in order to be good with politics, you kind of got to be a little sneaky, got to be a little conniving, and you got to be good at it, right? I love AOC, but sometimes she's not good with politics. Terrible. Making some pretty terrible political decisions, even though she's writing the policies. And so now people like Pelosi are really great at politics, not so good with policy. You see what I mean? But here's the thing. And by the way, that's on purpose. Look, Democratic leadership knows who Joe Manchin is. They count on Joe Manchin being Joe Manchin. They know he's a coal baron that agrees with Republicans. They have access to the same information that we do. And they count on it. They count on it. They know that Joe Manchin is corrupt. And you know what? They're fine with it because they're also corrupt in the same way. Now, let's go to the next one here. We've got Ilhan Omar, who also goes strong. Take a look.
I mean, we all knew that Senator Manchin couldn't be trusted. The excuses that he just made, I think, are complete bullshit. It is really disheartening to hear him say that he has been trying to get there for the people of West Virginia, because that's a complete lie.
Boom. Right there. Bullshit. 100%. Again, he says, oh, no, I can't do this because of debts. We got the deficit, and we get this and that. We got COVID, and we're going to worry about that. But we know, obviously, that it's because he doesn't want poor people to have nice things. He has told his colleagues that he thought that poor people were just using the child tax credit checks to buy drugs. Literally. Of course, that's not the reality. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now, Rashida Tlaib also said this in a tweet. She said, Joe Manchin pretends to have a problem with the cost of $1.75 trillion investment over 10 years in the American people, but has no problem with giving $9 trillion to weapons makers and the military. 100%. In another tweet, she said this, it shouldn't surprise anyone that Manchin goes on Fox to kill Build Back Better. He's been promising to do so for months, and some folks didn't want to believe him. We gave up our leverage the moment BIF passed, and he got the fossil fuel subsidies he wanted. 100%. Now, you want to know who voted against a bipartisan infrastructure bill? Because I think this is important. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and Ayanna Pressley. Now, when that happened, what was cable news up to? What were they saying about this? How dare you? You call yourselves Democrats? How could you vote against bipartisan infrastructure bill? You are holding back the party. You are terrible Democrats. How could you not believe President Joe Biden when he told you that he would get this done? That we didn't have to pass them together, that you could decouple it because you got a promise from Joe Manchin and Joe Biden that he would get this done, that he would deliver. Are you impugning the integrity of the principal Joe Manchin? Yes. Yes, I am. Of course. Again, no matter what, he was going to kill this. It doesn't matter how much you shave it down. He never had any intention of letting any of this pass. And it's not just him. You had other corporate Democrats in the party that used Manchin as cover. And by the way, this is the rotating villain, okay? Without Joe Manchin being, against this openly, well, you'd have Kyrsten Sinema. Whatever happened to Kyrsten Sinema, right? She still never signed onto the bill. Plus, you had John Tester, Bob Menendez. You have these other corporate Democrats that are also against getting rid of the filibuster and also against doing these kinds of social spendings. Now, of course, here's the thing. It's so popular that they know that if they openly go up against it, that's going to hurt them in their elections. And so they don't want to take a hit on opposing this publicly. So guess what? Joe Manchin, when Joe Manchin does it, they're secretly like, yeah, go Joe, go Joe. Hell yeah. You blocked the thing that helps people. Because we already got our corporate bill. Our donors are already happy and they don't want this. And so understand, that's how the rotating villain works. Now, here's the thing. The sad thing about Joe Manchin, he's probably going to win re-election. Why? It's because the infrastructure of the party, the Democratic Party, the DNC, supports him anyway. They know the role that Joe Manchin plays. Joe Manchin plays the heel. It's like wrestling. It's all an act. So he plays the heel. He's the bad guy. Everybody gets mad at him. But in reality, of course, the people behind the scenes, the leadership of the party, the corporate backers, I'm not talking just the leadership of the party because they're controlled by the corporate backers who love to enforce corporate rule. They're like writing the script. Hey, Joe Manchin, you're going to play the bad guy because not only are you the bad guy, because they're all bad guys, but you have personal investments in coal and that, in fossil fuels. Well, this gets rid of some fossil fuels or invests more in new renewable energy. You don't like that personally. So why don't you be the fall guy this time? Don't worry, we'll still protect you in 2022 when you're up for re-election because there's not going to be any progressive that's going to challenge you. It's not going to provide a real challenge to you. So we'll protect you and we'll pretend that we need you. Because, we have to have you to vote for Democratic priorities when it's very, very clear that he's not going to vote for Democratic priorities. I think it's obvious. I think that most people are seeing beyond this little game that they're playing with our lives. Ever since the pandemic, people have been able to pay more attention to what's really going on behind the scenes. And I think that's why they're so desperate to get us back to work. So that we can't pay attention. So it sucks. And by the way, it's not the only game that they play. They also talk about the Senate parliamentarian, the unelected Senate parliamentarian who decides, and by the way, it doesn't have any actual power. But they can say, the Senate parliamentarian said no, so I guess we can't do it. Yeah, you can fire the Senate parliamentarian and put a different one in. Problem solved. Or the filibuster, which again, the filibuster, understand that these are put into place to protect Republicans and to protect corporate rule. As for so-called progressives like Pramila Jayapal, who are supposed to be better, no, you're not any better. You gave away the only leverage you had. I don't care that you feel betrayed by Joe Manchin. You betrayed the American people when you gave away your leverage and gave Manchin everything you wanted. Everything he wanted, I should say. Look, what they say about appeasement never works. Not in politics. You know what does work? Strength and integrity. Pramila Jayapal, through this entire negotiation, has proved that she has neither. And so she should not be the leader of progressives. All right. Yeah, when Republicans like Mitch McConnell are saying, way to go, Manchin, for pushing back, yeah. You know whose side they're on. All right. Let's move on. We got two more stories here. Let's get through them quick. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is a little bit of a hypocrite. I know, right? Now, the Georgia representative recently revealed in a disclosure filing that she owns stock in not just one, but 3 of the 4 manufacturers of the COVID-19 vaccines. Huh. Interesting. Now, this is according to a disclosure filed in August. Greene owns stock in Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson. Now, she actually gets income from her stocks. It's not very much. It's between $200 to $1,000 in income. Now, her investments in AstraZeneca, however, are valued between $1,000 to $15,000, while her assets in Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson are each valued between $15,000 to $50,000, according to disclosures. Fun. So now Nick Dyer, Marjorie Taylor Greene's spokesperson, did not respond for repeated requests from comment on Friday from the Times Free Press, though he told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that Greene does not handle her own investments. Ah, yes, of course. They're instead managed by a third-party financial advisor. Oh, see, it's not Marjorie Taylor Greene's fault. No. Third-party investor. Well, I mean, you could tell your third-party financial advisor, hey, I don't want my investments in dirty vaccines. Oh, I hate the vaccine. Oh, because again, that's what she's saying. She don't like the vaccine. But yet, she seems to like the companies that make the vaccines. Weird. Now, here's the thing. I don't think Congress people should own stocks. I think that creates a massive conflict of interest. And in fact, recent data, recent investigations basically reflect that. An insider investigation found that 49 lawmakers and nearly 200 staffers had violated the Stock Act. The disclosures for stocks. Senator Richard Burr was one of those. He was under investigation for actions that he took in February 2020. Just 1 month before COVID-19 really started ravaging the country, Burr sold more than $1.6 million in stock. That same day, ProPublica reported in October he had also called his brother-in-law and spoke to him for 50 seconds. Within the next minute, Burr's brother-in-law called his own stockbroker to take action. As chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time, ProPublica noted, Burr had access to all sorts of non-public information about national security and public health threats. As soon as he knew about COVID, after his meetings, he dumps a whole lot of stock and then calls his brother, who then dumped a lot of stock. Gee, I wonder what happened. I wonder if he was using insider information to protect his own finances. Weird. But yeah, no, that would suggest that he is corrupt. Are you saying that he is a corrupt? Yes, I am. I'm saying that you shouldn't. And by the way, this extends to Nancy Pelosi as well. Nancy Pelosi shouldn't be owning stock. She does. And she had recently come out and said, oh, I think it's totally fine that we own stock. We're a free market country. We should be able to do this. How about no? How about nobody's able to do it? Now, you also had former Georgia Senator Kelly Loeffler, who had sold $16 million worth of stock right before the market collapsed in the spring of 2020. California Senator Dianne Feinstein was also questioned by the FBI over her husband's stock trades during that same time period. Now, the Justice Department decided not to go after anyone because they all do it. It's all corruption. And so these same people perpetuate corporate rule. And that's what we're living in. And again, Marjorie Taylor Greene, also corrupt and a hypocrite. Again, publicly she says, oh, I don't like vaccines. I don't like the mandates. I'm not vaccinated personally. I refuse to get it. She spreads COVID-19 conspiracies. She refused to mask on the House floor. In fact, she has over $60,000 in fines for not wearing a mask on the House floor. But privately, she owns stock in the companies who make these vaccines. And she gets income from them. So she is part owner of Big Pharma. She is invested in Big Pharma. I thought she hated Big Pharma. You know what? I guess she didn't want her voters to know this. Nearly half of all Republicans are not vaccinated and refuse to get vaccinated. They even booed Donald Trump for promoting the vaccine. Now, the reason they hate it is not because they hate Big Pharma. No. They actually liked Big Pharma when they were doing other things. But now, suddenly vaccine. And by the way, I'm actually more talking about Congress. Congress loves Big Pharma. Now, the average Republican voter actually does hate Big Pharma. Because guess what? They do gatekeep life-saving medication. Now, there are conspiracy theorists that also hate Big Pharma. but for weirdo reasons. We actually don't like them because of their business model. A lot of the medications they make are absolutely fine. Again, the COVID-19 vaccine, safe and effective. Along with many other medications, the problem is that these medications are not affordable. That's the big problem with big pharma, all right? But again, here's the thing. It is part of their identity. These MAGA voters, specifically the ones who are anti-vax, to hate science and facts. To them, facts are a liberal conspiracy. We have to hate them. We have to hate them. Well, now seeing as how the unvaccinated are actually dying at an incredibly high rate from COVID, well, we can see that it's not going well for them. And so it's kind of curious why you still see Republicans out there like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other right-wing commentators going out there continuing to push lies on the vaccine. I wonder if they're just trying to profit off other people's ignorance. Perish the thought. Fun fact, I just got my booster shot this weekend, and I basically hibernated all Saturday. So, I'm good now, obviously. Feel much, much better. But yes, booster, good. I'm a Republican and I'm fully vaxxed. That's great! Then what I'm saying doesn't apply to you. Because obviously your name, John Smart, you're smart. You're one of the smart Republicans. Great. I love it. I'm glad. All right. But let's go to one more story here. Now we know what causes your tech. Oh, it must be the 5G. That's what it is. It's the 5G that caused my tech problems. Why my show's late. No, I'm kidding. All right. This is more of a workers' rights story. All right. A former manager at a Colorado Papa John's was fired for closing his restaurant early. So now Chris Jackson used to work at a Colorado Papa John's and talked to Insider and said that he'd been with the company for more than 13 years and had been working some rather long stretches of back-to-back open-to-close shifts for the pizza chain. Why? Because they've been having some difficulty staffing during the pandemic. Now, of course, that makes sense because it's not easy to keep people in a job that pays $8.75 an hour for food prep. If you're a general employee there, you're not making a lot of money. You're certainly making or not making bank. Now, he decided to close early because he had a scheduling conflict. He had some medical obligations and couldn't find anyone to cover for him. In fact, this was posted to the Reddit our anti-work community, which, by the way, check that out because it's awesome. And Jackson explained that on Monday, the Tuesday evening shift leader told him that they had a medical appointment and couldn't cover the shift. He too said that he had a family medical obligation at that time and asked his area manager to find some coverage. Okay. Now, on Tuesday afternoon, however, Jackson was told that no one would be able to cover the shift. So he decided that, well, if I can't get anyone to cover it, I'm not going to miss my medical appointment. I'm just going to close early. I'm going to close about 3 hours early. Okay, so 5 p.m. Well, the next day, he found out that because of his closure, he was fired. Gone. How dare you miss 3 hours of potential profit? What, medical obligation? Who cares about your medical obligation? No. How dare you have any plans outside of work? You're fired. You're fired. Get out, get out, get out. Now, here's the thing, right? Not finding someone to be able to cover your shift, that sucks. I get it. It sucks. I'm sure more than a few of you understand the pain of trying to find your own coverage in jobs like that. I hear you. But here's the thing, right? People have to have time for medical appointments. Health's kind of important. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And by the way, there are some, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, there are some places where you make an appointment and you don't show up or you cancel, they still charge you for the appointment. So you still end up having to pay, plus you don't even get to do what you went there for. And so you're out money, and probably, at least going back to the experiences that I've had with making appointments, you often get put on a pretty long waiting list, depending on what it is. And so, yes, you could be waiting 2 to 3 weeks to reschedule your appointment, sometimes longer. So it's really important to be able to make those appointments when you can. And so that's that's something that employees, or I should say employers, need to take into account. But they don't. They don't. Now, for me, of course, here's the thing. I think for me, my health is obviously more important than making money for a faceless corporation. But I also understand, I get that it's easy for me to say, sitting right here in this chair. I get it. I mean, I'm not in that, I don't have to be in that situation before. So again, it's easy for me to talk. I talk for a living, but I used to be in that position. I used to work in the factories. I used to be working at the grocery stores, stocking shelves and, taking inventory and off of trucks and sorting them. I used to do all that stuff. I've dealt with working for terrible people firsthand. I get it. So I have been there. And so still, health is way more important, and it should be more important. Unfortunately, we don't value employees. We value potential profits, corporations. But he continues. He says, he told Insider, quote, "It's weird because I hadn't had any issues at all at work. That's why I was confused. This is the only incident that ever happened." Jackson provided screenshots of text messages and emails that were consistent with his story, including a company form saying that he was fired. Now, the post was removed from Reddit for sharing too much information. But here's what one form read. Quote, "Chris closed a restaurant without approval. Closing a restaurant without approval is cause for immediate termination of employment." Now, Colorado, by the way, is an at-will state. It just means that employees can be fired at will. Just whatever, for any reason or no reason at any time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So, of course, he shuts down just 3 hours early. 3 hours of missed potential profit. That's enough for him to be completely canned. Now, a spokesperson for Papa John's told Insider that the location is owned by an independent franchise partner. Now, understand that franchises are pretty much how corporations can get away with treating their workers poorly. Oh no, we're just going to do franchisees, and whatever they do, it just can't go back to the company. Now, that franchise partner has sole authority over its own workforce decisions. That franchise owner did not respond to Insider's request for comment. Maybe it's because, he might have to now cover all the shifts because he had fired them. Now, here's some more information, just in case you still think that this person might have been a bad worker. Now, again, first time it happened, and it was for a medical obligation. But also, let me just note that as a full-time salaried manager, Jackson had said that he was responsible for covering more than full-time hours for no additional pay. He said if I worked 50 or 60 hours, it didn't matter in the pay at all. And that he had been regularly having to do so as a result of not being able to find people to staff. Now, there's another reason. Why can't they find people to staff? If there's a labor shortage, certainly with all these open jobs, somebody would want to come in and start working for Papa John's. Well, it turns out, no. But first, before I do that, the company did eventually agree to a weekly cap of 55 hours on his schedule. Wow, that's still 15 hours with no additional pay. Now, general managers in Colorado and Papa John's do make an average of about $20 an hour. Now, that's, again, for 40 hours. The additional hours that he was putting in, covering all these other shifts, because they were short-staffed, he didn't get paid for. So it's just literal theft. They were stealing from this guy the whole time. But again, why couldn't they find any replacements? Why find replacements when someone will work for them for free? All those additional hours. Again, it comes back to greed, everybody. It always goes back to greed. Now, Jackson also said that he was not authorized to offer a wage or salary high enough to attract and retain workers and managers for the restaurant. He said, quote, they'll just be like, this is the top line where we can pay. And you know, it's expensive. It's like really expensive here. It's true. Look, nobody can afford to live off of Papa John's wage. They're lucky if they make $20,000 a year. And guess what? That's a poverty wage. Of course, nobody wants to work for that. They were lucky that this manager was doing all their shifts for free. But now, now that he's gone, now that they fired him, they're really going to be SOL now. Maybe the franchise owner might have to be working those additional shifts. I'd love to see that happen. I'd like to see him really figure out what it's like to work 55 to 60-hour weeks and not get paid for the additional hours over 40. Oh, wouldn't that be so nice? I'd like them to see for firsthand why staff decide they don't want to stick around. All right. All right. The guy from Florida, what the guy from Florida who applied for 60 jobs and got one interview? Yeah, the labor shortage, supposed labor shortage is an absolute scam. There's not a labor shortage. They just want to overwork people, steal their wages, and, and then blame workers for not taking low wages. All right. That's it. That's all I got today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for all the new followers. SBloom85, thank you for resubbing from onto tier 1. Appreciate that. And again, thank you all the new followers. Normally, we start at 4. Today, a little bit of an issue. Let's see. Jedi Dragon Protector says, Florida's Stop Woke Act is unwoke. I have been meaning to talk about that because that is some messed up stuff. We'll get to that one of these days. There's always plenty of stories to talk about, but I am super, super late. Let's go through here and read some more super chats real quick before we go. Give me a second here. All right, here we go. Dango Bangles asks, what does Manchin say about poor people spending money that the federal government gets? I swear Joe Manchin said they wasted on something. Yes, it says they wasted on drugs. Thank you, Gabby Mathis. It's very, very kind of you. And the UK NHS found anti-5G necklaces are radioactive. Wait. So are people wearing radioactive necklaces on their neck? What the fuck? Okay. All right. Fun. All right, everybody. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe, share, and like the stream. Also, videos, we'll have those up later today as well. So that's great. Let's raid into... hold on. Let's just raid into the serfs on Twitch. Fun times. All right, everybody. Thank you, love you, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow, hopefully at the normal time.
I have not won this conversation.
Please clap.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.